Hey everybody. All right. So yesterday we were talking about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, came in as the president in 1932. Today we're going to start talking about his entire policy that he had to bring America out of the Great Depression. So he's got like a name for his whole time in office. All right. And this is FDR. So his entire time in office, he calls the New Deal. All right, and you're going to hear that referenced all the time now. So the New Deal is his idea over how he's going to bring America out of the Great Depression. Now, keep in mind, it's just completely collapsed. All right, so the New Deal, what that means, it's not like he's a car salesman. He's like, all right, let's make a deal. All right. He's using like a poker reference here. He's like, all right, so here's what's going to happen. It's like we all got a bum hand. Like you got dealt a hand in cards, all right, and you got 5 cards, right? And you got like a 2, a 7, an Uno card, a 5 of Monopoly money, and a paperclip. Like you're like, what am I going to do with this? He says a new deal, and it's a very good analogy because he's saying that everybody's going to get redealt cards. However, when you're playing cards, before you can get new cards, what do you have to do with your existing cards? You have to turn them in. So the analogy is very good because by using this analogy, he's letting people know that he's going to make it better. All right, he's going to make it different. He's going to make it better, but there's going to be change and effort on your part first in order to make this happen. So the whole New Deal concept is a very good way of presenting it. He is a very good communicator. He is fantastic at it. He is very good at getting his message across to the average people. FDR is not our smartest president we've ever had. He is extremely intelligent. All right, all the presidents that we have are very intelligent. You have to be able to do that job. But as far as ranking among presidents, he's probably not the smartest. And typically, a lot of times, the smartest presidents can struggle. Richard Nixon is an example of that. That when you are incredibly intelligent, all right, you're used to being the smartest person you've ever been around. So you don't listen to other people's ideas a whole lot. When you are just really smart and you understand the value of other people's input, like FDR is, you really have the ability to do something special. And that is FDR. So FDR, he's very smart, but he also realizes where his shortcomings are and surrounds himself with the best possible people, which helps his administration drastically. All right, so the New Deal, the very first thing that he does is he creates his brain trust of advisors, all right? So he has a cabinet, and he refers to them as the brain trust. So he doesn't care if you're Republican, Democrat, male, female, black, or white, and we're going to get to that tomorrow. We talk about the equality in his administration, and it freaked people out. But when he starts bringing in just the best and the brightest, which is a term JFK will eventually use, he calls it his brain trust of the absolute best people that he can bring together and bounce ideas off of them. He doesn't care if they like him or not. He doesn't care if they voted for him. He's not trying to give them a job because of who they are or what they've done in the past. It's, are they the best person to do this one thing? If they are, I want to bring them in. So FDR kind of started the precedent that some presidents follow, where you bring in people that may not even like you because they're actually just really good at their job. His brain trust and advisors helped him come up with his New Deal plan. The New Deal, and this is the official definition for it, but we're going to reference it all the time. This was FDR's overall title he gave to his time in office. He had 3 goals: focus on relief for the needy, economic recovery, and financial reform. This is what that means. It's like the 3 R's: relief, recovery, reform. Focus on relief for the needy. Step 1, somebody starving to death in the street, get them food. Step 1, get them food. Don't let that person die. Number 2, fix it. Fix this situation. All right. So relief for the needy is make sure they don't die. Number 2, fix it. All right. Put it back the way it was. And then number 3, reform, make sure this junk don't ever happen again. All right. So the New Deal plan is a huge encompassing thing in which his goal is to, with the 3 R's, not only fix the Great Depression, but make sure one of these doesn't happen again. So FDR is going to be one of the more beloved presidents that we have. It's not so much like, oh, I want to go give him a hug, but this is a man that you feel like you could follow in battle. All right. The reason, even though he's in a wheelchair, that would be kind of hard, odd mental picture. All right. So the fireside chats. This is extremely influential. There has really not been a president up to, I'm going to say Donald Trump is the next closest one that comes anything close to what FDR does in his fireside chats. Donald Trump uses Twitter, and he connects with the American public on a daily basis or every 10 minutes or however much he's on Twitter. No president has been able to do it, because I usually teach that no president's ever come anywhere close to what FDR has done, but Donald Trump does communicate with the public as effectively as FDR does. They usually have different messages, but they are both very good at it. So what FDR does is he has these things called a fireside chat. Everybody's panicking in America, all right? And his main thing is to keep him from panicking. So every night he rolls into his Oval Office at his desk, all right? Kicks his legs up on, well, he don't kick his legs up on the desk. So he rolls up to his desk every night. He's gonna have a microphone. I have a microphone on my desk. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Where's it? Yeah, that's how you hear me. All right. Anywho, y'all can't see it. So he goes up to the microphone. It's on his desk, and he flips a switch, turns it on, and he just starts talking. He does this every night. All right. And he's like, today I had a turkey sandwich for lunch. I did this. Like, just rant. There's no pre-scripted anything. He's just talking. So, because on that microphone, he has it connected to the top of the White House, which has a signal, a radio signal that transmits over the entire country. People are terrified of the Great Depression, of what's going to happen, but he reassures them every night over the radio waves, and it's called the fireside chats. He'll tell you, like, hey, all right, I talked to Senator so-and-so today. We made some progress. We weren't able to do this. I'm going to go talk to them tomorrow. We're going to be able to get this. And he methodically explains to the American people in very layman's terms of what is happening, how they're moving forward. It's always hopeful. It's always consistency. And people really, really, really buy into this, and they love it. It's called the fireside chats. He is not sitting here next to a fire. I think I have a video clip here in a minute for it, where it shows him sitting by a fire. So Mr. Wexaff's a liar. That was for like show, with his wife's over there like knitting. By the way, his wife is Eleanor Roosevelt, probably the most influential first lady we've ever had in the United States, astronomically. And it's worth mentioning here early on when we talk about the New Deal. FDR, he has charisma. He is good. He can convince people of things. He's very smart. He is a good communicator, and he is not afraid to make a decision. He's not necessarily an ideas guy, all right, because he understands he may not be the smartest person around. So a lot of his ideas that he comes up with are actually his wife's, Eleanor Roosevelt, who he absolutely agrees with her as a team. And I'm really glad to see as we go further in history, they're giving her more credit, because a lot of these ideas he comes up with are actually his wife's ideas that she can funnel through him, and they work together very good as a team. When he gets sick later on in his fourth term in office, as we talked about yesterday, she basically takes over the role of the president in a lot of aspects. And people realized that what Eleanor says goes. They are very much a team. He's clearly the president, the guy people voted for, but they're absolutely a team, and I think history has done a good job of acknowledging that. I don't know how much that was acknowledged in the 1930s, but in history, looking back on it, Eleanor Roosevelt is a pivotal part of what's going to happen with the New Deal, because a lot of these ideas are her ideas, and then he takes them and implements them into the political sphere. But the fireside chats, back to this, they're called the fireside chats because the people that are listening to it, the people that still have a house, are typically in their living rooms, which is where their radio would be, because nobody has TVs at the time, sitting next to a fire, getting heat, listening to the radio. So they're called fireside chats because most people that still have a house would be sitting by their fireplace listening to it, and that's why they're called fireside chats. This is a picture of FDR sitting at his desk. I was trying to find you a picture of him sitting at a desk talking. This is clearly, you're like, God, he got old quick. This is in his probably third term in office. This is clearly World War II, where it says keep them flying. So this is in the early 1940s, but so we haven't got there yet. But we're going to get there. But this is a picture of him just sitting at his desk with microphones in front of him. All right. So FDR, and this, again, it's important because we're going to reference it again. So FDR is like, all right, we're going to fix things. But he's not just going to like willy-nilly just throw things out there left and right. He comes in with a fully functioning plan. Here's his plan. All right. He calls it his first 100 days. He's like, here's what we're going to do. The first 100 days I take office, this is about 3 months, I want to pass a crap ton of laws. All right. I want them all through. All the laws I'm going to pass for the 4 years I'm in office, my first 4 years, they're all going to be passed in the first 100 days. All right. Because I don't want to do knee-jerk reactions. I'm going to try to so I'm going to pass all the laws in the first 100 days. Then I'm going to spend the rest of the 4 years making sure that they work. All right. So all these laws I'm going to pass, I'm going to give them years to work to make sure that they're being effective. So his first 100 days, you see a flurry of laws come out. There's a couple reasons for this. One, he's giving you an idea of like what his game plan is. He has a structure to it all. He also doesn't want to freak people out when he does see laws just nonstop coming out. Like this is what's going to happen for 4 years. So he very clearly up front, he calls it his first 100 days of his time in office that he's going to pass a bunch of laws, and after that he's not going to pass anything else. He's just going to make sure all the stuff that got passed works for the next 4 years. So here's some of the stuff that he is going to pass in his first 100 days. All right. Two things are really important. All right. So nobody trusted the banks. Shocker in the 1930s, because what happened when last time you put your money in the bank? The bank shut down and you lost everything. However, society can't function without banks. That's how people get loans. People don't have money, they can borrow money. There's no other options. There's no credit cards. There's no nothing like that. So unless you had the cash on you, you couldn't do anything, and nobody had cash. So to get everything up and running again, you had to get a loan. There's no banks, so there is no loans because all the banks had shut down. So one of the very first things, I don't have it here in your notes, but it is really, really important. FDR, one of the very first things he does in the first 100 days, and I should, again, put this in the notes because it's really important, he declares a bank holiday. And you're like, oh, holiday. Yeah. He shuts them all down. And basically, the only way you can open back up is if you can prove to the federal government that you're not doing dumb things with people's money, like buying on margin and investing it in the stock market, because that's a no-go now. So what he did is he shut down all the banks, and he basically had them all inspected by the federal government, even though banks were private industries. Had them inspected by the federal government, and once they met the government's expectations, they could open back up, because the last thing FDR is going to do is encourage you to put your money in the bank, and then the banks fail, and then that makes him look bad. So he puts a bank holiday, shuts down the banks, makes sure they're good. The ones that are good get opened back up. If you're not good, you have to fix the way you're doing things before you're allowed to open back up. So once that happens, all right, the government passes this thing called the Glass-Steagall Act. The Glass-Steagall Act ensures your money in the bank up to $5,000. Meaning, and keep in mind, nobody had $5,000 back then. So if you put your money in the bank, you get $600 in the bank, and your bank does poof, gone, and disappears, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? The United States government will give you $600 the next day. You can't lose your money anymore. The Glass-Steagall Act is a way of like insuring your money in the bank. It's a very early one of doing that. So the Glass-Steagall Act insures the money in the bank, so if the bank shut down, you can't lose it. This is an incentive to get people to put their money back in the bank. The next thing, so the Glass-Steagall Act tries to help get the banks up and running because it gives people confidence to put their money back in the bank. The Federal Securities Act. Remember when Billy lied about how good his poopy flavored lollipop company was? Well, that can't happen anymore. They created the Federal Securities Act. If you're going to put your money on the stock market, you actually have to be accurate about it. You can't lie about it. You have to be accurate, because that's what caused so many people so many bad things in the stock market, is they were investing in companies that they didn't realize how good or bad they actually were. This is FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt. That is his wife. So I hesitate to even say this. But so Elenor is his cousin. Yeah, I was going to let that one sink in for a second. Yeah, so they're related, and there's really no reason for me to bring that up here in class, but it is just something I thought you might be interested in. That is not highly uncommon. Now, she's not his first cousin. She's separated. They're far enough apart that there's not going to be like, I don't know, mutant children or anything. But it is a random factoid in history. But she is incredibly important in American history because they are very much a team, even though he is the face, I guess, of the family, of the administration. She absolutely is incredibly important in their society, in American society. All right. So here's some of the stuff that FDR passes, and a lot of this is still around today. So this is super cool. So we fix this whole supply and demand thing with the farmers keep putting themselves out of business. We fixed it. So everybody loves to hate on the government, the United States government, because, oh, they're so incompetent, they can't do stuff. There are some things that the United States government has done, and it works extremely well, and nobody talks about it because it goes well. This is one of them. It's the Agricultural Adjustment Act. This is how America to this day still mass produces, we still mass produce as much food as possible. It's super dirt cheap food, and all the farmers make good money. Here's how. So the Agricultural Adjustment Act, created in the first 100 days of FDR's time in office, they go to a farmer in the middle of the country. All right. And the farmer has, we'll say, 100 acres of beets that he grows. He grows beets. The United States government's like, all right, well, here's what we want you to do. We only want you to grow 7 acres of beets and don't grow anything on the other 93 acres. Well, you would think the farmer would be like, nah, I ain't going to do that. Then I won't make any money. The United States government says, you don't have to. You can grow whatever you want, but we'll tell you what we'll do. If you only grow 7 acres of beets, if you do exactly what we are asking you, and we're just asking, if you do exactly what we ask you to do and grow what we want you to grow, we, the United States government, will pay you as if you grew 100 acres of beets at premium market price. Guess what every farmer does? They grow what the government asks them to grow because you actually make more money doing that. So the government pays the farmers. So where does this money come from? It comes from taxes. So the United States government taxes people and then pays the farmers, and we have plenty of food. The farmers make money. There's no shortage of anything, and the government regulates how much food that we make in a private industry. We've been doing it since the 1930s. We don't have shortage of food in the United States because the government regulates it. And because it works so well, and there's never really been an issue that, and I say never, there's just not an issue. Nobody talks about it. So while we talk enough trash about the government, especially in this class, on some of the ineptitude that can go on, it is important to point out the things that do work. The Agricultural Adjustment Act is absolutely a foundation of our society today, and it is very effective. But that is how he fixes the whole thing with people not growing enough stuff. Another thing that they're going to do is go out there and plant trees in the middle of the country, so that it kind of limits this wind situation. So here's the next thing he does. It's called the Civilian Conservation Corps. You have all these homeless dudes just desperately looking for a job. Here's FDR's idea, and here's what they do. Now, this is going to sound like a really, really good idea, because, I mean, it really is a dang good idea. What you have to understand is it's not really possible to do this today, or we could do it today. This is astronomically expensive to do, and we're going to talk about where this money is coming from, all right? So what he does to put people to work was, these men are wandering the country just desperately looking for a job so they can get money and send it to their family. That is their entire goal right now. So, but the fear was, if you just give these men money, then it's going to destroy their initiative to go to work, right? So even though FDR knows the government needs to do something, he also understands what Hoover was saying, like, man, if we just give people money, they're just may never go back to work. So what he does is he creates a thing called the Civilian Conservation Corps. Here's how it would work in practice, and it was very common and very successful. So like every town would have like some building. It would most likely be something like the YMCA. Like in today's society, it'd be like the YMCA. So like the YMCA in Moxville. what they would do is they would take over the United States government. The YMCA would probably already be closed down anyway. They would take it over. They're like, all right, this is the YMCA. It is now the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. Any man that wants a job can come to the YMCA, all right, and they can stay there. They're going to give you 3 meals a day. They're going to give you a hot shower, bathroom, and a place to sleep at night, every night. You're no longer homeless, all right? However, in order to stay there, you're going to get up at 8 a.m. and they're going to take you to work every day. And you're going to work from 8 to 5 p.m. every day, all right, with an hour lunch break. So these men wake up in the morning at the YMCA, and tons of men did this because they were homeless. They go and they go out and they do a job. It's usually anything around the town that can be fixed. If there's a tree down that needs to be cut up, if there's a stoplight that needs to be fixed, if there's signs that need to be put in, anything that can be done around town. If there's literally nothing to be done around town, they'll take them out in the middle of a field and make them dig a huge hole. The next day, they'll take them back and they'll have them fill that hole back in. They're having them do something. And then, all right, so do these men need anything? They have food, shelter, it's something to do every day. They don't need anything, but the whole reason they wanted a job was to feed their families. So they actually get paid for this. However, they don't get the money. The check that they receive from the government for this gets sent directly to their family. So now men are working and they're able to provide for their family. The amount of money they're making is probably minimum wage or below, but it is something to keep their families alive, and they are doing it. So it is extremely expensive because the United States government is just losing money left and right over this. Because they're not actually gaining any money from it, but they're paying families, they're putting men back to work. And the Civilian Conservation Corps is the New Deal's way of having men work and provide for their families without just giving them money. So that's why they just have them dig a hole and fill it back in, that you are working for this money. They also don't pay them enough to where it's like the very first job that's available, anything is better than working for the CCC because it's pretty brutal work and you get paid next to nothing. But it is a way to keep your family alive, and men are still providing for their family. Men that have abandoned their family, they don't get paid. They can still come to the CCC, but they don't actually get any money because there's no family for them to take care of. So the CCC actually did a really good job of all these hobos that are just looking for work to provide for their family, of providing that. Again, at a great financial cost to the United States government that we're going to talk about here. Because you're like, Mr. Wax, we've been talking about how there's no money in the government. You're right. We're literally going into crazy debt for this. We're spending money we don't have, and we're going to get to that in a second. So the National Industrial Recovery Act, NIRA, gave money to states to build schools and other community buildings. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the story now. I think it might be later here in the notes, but I want to go ahead and tell you because it's really cool. So the National Industrial Recovery Act, everybody loves FDR because in the 1930 elections, it was all Democrats. All right, they came in. FDR is elected in 1932. He's a Democrat. So boom, he's like Agricultural Adjustment Act, Civilian Conservation Corps, Glass-Steagall Act, Federal Securities Act, like just one after another, like boom, 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 just flying right through Congress. Everybody loves him. Everybody's great, except for the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, those 9 Supreme Court justices, they're appointed for life. Well, they all got appointed long before 1930. So guess what political party appointed them? It was all Republicans. And generally speaking, they're not big fans of FDR. They think a lot of this is government overstep. So the Supreme Court decides they're going to choose NIRA as the random act that they're going to shut down. So NIRA, it does a whole bunch of stuff. I got a video clip here in a second for it, and it talks about NIRA gives money to all different stuff. For this purpose, NIRA was supposed to give money to the states so that the states can open schools back up. The Supreme Court, which are basically Republicans, even though Supreme Court justices aren't actually in a political party, since they were all appointed by Republicans, they typically view Republican concepts more favorably. The Supreme Court says, nah, they call NIRA unconstitutional and throw it out. All right. So the reason they do this is they say the federal government does not have the right to tell a state government what to do with money given to them by the federal government. And they throw it out. Now, to this point, FDR has all been fun and games, high fives all around. He's like, hey, what's going on? Like, he's getting what he wants. All of a sudden, he finds out one day that the Supreme Court has overturned NIRA. he ain't real happy anymore. He's like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. So what FDR does is he rolls into Congress one day, kicks open the doors. Nah, he ain't kicking anything open. He pushes them open, rolls down to the front of the squeaky. He gets down to the front of I know you giggled at that. He got down to the front of Congress. Now, Congress loves him. And he's like, hey, you guys hear about NERA? And they're like, yeah, it got overturned. Sorry, man. It got ruled unconstitutional. That's a bummer. He's like, yeah. What are we going to do about it? And they're like, what do you mean, what are we going to do about it? It's unconstitutional. You can't do anything. Once the Supreme Court says you can't do anything about it, he's like, all right. What if? Got an idea here. Let me fire the Supreme Court justices and replace them. Now, Congress loves FDR, all right? But they all get together and they're like, mumble, talk, unconstitutional, can't do that. Oh. No, because Congress, while they would love to do whatever he wants to do, they're not going to blatantly violate the Constitution, and you can't fire Supreme Court justices. So FDR gets like super salty over this. He's like, grumble. He's like, how about this? And he calls this his court packing scheme. It's not his court packing idea, court packing plan. He calls it his scheme. Right? If it's on the up and up, you probably shouldn't call it a scheme. All right? His court packing scheme is he's like, all right, all those Supreme Court justices can stay, but what I want to do is I want to add additional Supreme Court justices, make there 15 on the Supreme Court, and then I can appoint the ones I like, and they will water down the ones that don't like me, and I can do whatever I want. And Congress is like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. Grumble, completely unconstitutional. No. No? All right, and FDR's like, it's like, fine. He's like, y'all have a good day. And he's like, rolls out real angrily, squish, kicks open the doors and pushes open the doors. And he leaves, and Congress is like, oh my gosh, I've never seen FDR get super worked up like that. Well, just so this is true. There's nothing nefarious. Everybody's looked up. There's nothing nefarious. It's all like legit. So over the course of his time in office, all 6 Supreme Court justices that votes against him, that does not like him, either died of natural causes or just impromptu retired super early, right? And he got to replace them all anyway. I don't know if in like 1933 if being decapitated by a wheelchair counts as a natural cause, but no, I joke. FDR didn't have anything nefarious to do with these Supreme Court justices. It was just the guys he really didn't like all just quit or retired, or they died of natural causes in a very short time period in which he was able to replace all of them in the Supreme Court. So the only thing that was really standing up against him in his first 100 days in his time in office in general was the Supreme Court. Now those guys have been taken out, replaced, all right? So now he has the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. Everybody's on his side, and things are going to go really, really, really smooth from this point on. Now, what's interesting is all of this started over NERA, all right, the National Industrial Recovery Act. So he wants to create NERA again. However, it's officially on the books as it is like unconstitutional, so he can't make NERA again. But what he can do is he can make the exact same act again, name it something different, all right? And when that happens, so he can create a whole nother act, name it something different, and then have that one passed. So that's exactly what he does. He renames NERA the Wagner Act, and then has that passed. So like, you look at, oh, NERA's unconstitutional, but this Wagner Act thing, that's good. So he is able to effectively get everything that he wants to get done in this situation.
That same year, Roosevelt also submitted the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which limited crop production in order to increase crop prices and help reduce surplus.
This is a poster for the Civilian Conservation Corps. This is the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. This is where people could go like to like a building like the YMCA, and work, and the government will pay you, and it gives money to your family. This is men lining up to go to the CCC. So the New Deal is under attack. FDR, crazy popular, all right? So FDR being super crazy popular, you wouldn't think there'd be a lot of criticism of him, but there is, all right? One of the big issues is this concept of deficit spending. He is literally spending more money than the United States government is making, putting us in debt. So everybody, this is like the first time we've made a conscious decision to do that. Like, we're like, yeah, that's fine. We're just spending money we don't have. And everybody's freaking out about it. But here's his logic. And he uses an analogy that is perfect for the time. But since it's now 2020, that we have to clarify what this term means. He's like, it's all right, guys. We're just priming the pump. All right. So what that analogy means, and it makes sense to anybody in the 1930s, it's like if you've ever been to like a farm where they have one of those hand pumping wells, or just like a spigot, you pump it forever and then the water finally comes out. You may have only seen them on movies, or if you've been around one, you know exactly what I'm getting ready to talk about. So it's like a well with a hand pump. Well, if you get out there in the morning at one of these farms and you start trying to pump to get water out, you're going to just start pumping that handle and nothing's going to happen. You're going to feel like all this thing's broken. You're not. There's like a huge straw that goes into the ground. As you pump, you're pumping out the air of the straw and it's pulling the water slowly up until it gets to the spigot to come out. All that work that you're doing before the water comes out is called priming the pump. You're getting it ready to be able to do something that you want to do. It's like wasted effort, but it's going to be paid off because you're going to get your water. He uses this analogy. He's like, yeah, we're spending a whole bunch of money we don't have. We're just priming the pump. We have to spend all this money that we don't have, all right, because we're just like make-believe money, kind of. We're going to just spend all this money right now. Then, once the society is up and running again, everybody's making money, then we'll just pay off that debt, all right? So deficit spending was one of the main arguments against what he is doing. We end up really, we never pay off this debt. That's a whole nother, that's a personal finance, or I guess macroeconomics lesson on that one. But he justifies this, that once we make money and we're making bank, we'll pay off all the debt that we have right now. So deficit spending was a huge criticism of his time in office, but he said this is just what needs to be done. So in 1936, all right, where am I at? In 1936, he's going to run for president. Like, he's clearly going to win. Like, huge. The only guy that really is going to run against him is a guy named Huey Long. Huey Long wanted a communist-style government. Keep in mind, when economies really collapse and everybody is really, really poor, communism starts sounding like a good idea. So the fact that there's actually like a communist guy that's running for president and is like the '1 opponent to FDR in 1936 is pretty crazy. He was very critical of the New Deal, wanted a communist-style government. This dude in 1936 running for president is giving a speech. I got a picture here. This is Huey Long giving a speech in front of everybody and gets shot in front of like 1,000 witnesses at point blank range with a pistol, is shot, and they never catch the guy that killed him, and he is assassinated and running for president. All right. So there's that. I imagine that the audio of it would be like squeaky, squeaky. Hey, did y'all hear that? No, I didn't hear anything. Oh. FDR's wrong. I don't like the New Deal. Squeaky, squeaky. Did you hear that? No. All right. The New Deal and deficit spending is really pow. So I'll just humor myself here. Then they show up and I don't know what happened, and there's just like 2 tire tracks, like wagon trails, just going off into the distance. It's a mystery. Never know what happened. No, FDR did not shoot Huey Long. Let me clarify that. This is just me being silly and ridiculous here. But Huey Long is assassinated. And so in 1936, I want to say FDR won all 50 states. It wasn't unanimous. Like, other people got votes. I'm sure it's not like George Washington. But in 1936, you talk about having a mandate, which is an overwhelming public support for a president. FDR had it, and he was crazy popular in the 1936 election. All right. So FDR wins huge in 1936. All right. Move myself around. So he comes out in 1936, and he's going to have his second 100 days. So I want to clarify this. It makes sense when you realize it. So when do you think the second 100 days is? The second 100 days is not directly after the first 100 days. The second 100 days is the first 100 days of his second term of office. So he's going to do the same thing. He's going to pass a whole bunch of laws up front, and then he's going to spend the next 4 years making sure that they work. All right, so his second 100 days is an extension of the New Deal. Eleanor Roosevelt, we talked about her, incredibly important in American history because a lot of these ideas are going to come from her. He steps up the Works Progress Administration, the WPA. The WPA is going to replace the CCC. So we're one step away now, all right? So the WPA, what happens now is all those men that work for the CCC, you no longer are going to stay at the YMCA. You're going to go home and stay with your family. All right, putting families back together. Works Progress Administration. Every day the man wakes up, he travels to work. It's going to be the same work as the CCC. You travel to work, you work there, and then you get the paycheck at the end of the week to take it home to your family. So it's the WPA is the next step in the CCC of putting families back together and people working. He has his court packing plan. This happens in the second 100 days, where with NERA, and he wants to replace them, and it doesn't work out. The court packing plan never happens. He's never able to add more justices, but pure coinkydink that all the justices he doesn't like just magically vacate their jobs for mysterious or, completely normal reasons. Again, I joke about it. He clearly did not kill Supreme Court justices. I don't want to even. I use a lot of sarcasm, so with y'all being in my class, I will make sure I'm not. My history teacher told me that FDR just shot all the Supreme Court justices. So that's what I learned. That's not true. So the Wagner Act ends up replacing NERA, and he's able to get all the stuff that he wants to done. And this is the WPA. Just again, it's like the CCC, but it's the next step in it. All right, he creates the National Youth Program, National Youth Association, in which this is to try to work with the wild boys. So these kids have been out of school for so long, they ain't going back. The National Youth Program is designed basically like the CCC, but for kids. You put them here, you give them 3 meals a day, give them a place to sleep. However, in order to get that, they have to go to school for 4 hours a day at that location. So it basically is an attempt to get kids off the street. The Wagner Act, as we talked about, reestablished NERA stronger. He creates the Social Security Act, which is still around today. So the Social Security Act acts as welfare for needy families and for retired people. So the Social Security Act, still to this day, you pay into it in every paycheck that you have. And then when you turn 65 years old, in theory, you start getting paid by the government. So one of the last things we'll talk about here with the Social Security Act is a lot of people don't understand. So Social Security, when it comes out of your paycheck, doesn't go into a retirement account for you. The money that comes out of your paycheck right now, and everybody that has a paycheck, if you look at your pay stub, you'll have Social Security taken out. That goes to pay for the current retired people today. So that comes right out of your check and goes into somebody else's pocket who worked their whole life. Because in theory, when you retire at 65 years old, you will start being paid by the young whippersnappers that are working then. The issue, and while it seems to make good sense, the issue has become is the fact that people are living a lot longer, so they're taking the money for a longer period of time, and that the largest amount of the population is a group called the baby boomers, which are that are all about 65 years old. There's not enough people working to provide all of them with their retirement, and it's a big concern. So the big fear is that I'm close enough to your age as opposed to retirement, we'll work our whole lives, pay Social Security, and then by the time we get to retirement age, the entire program won't exist anymore because all the money had been spent. So that is a current fear in society. But Social Security Act is still around today, and it's basically supposed to help people when things absolutely hit rock bottom. It's supposed to be able to help people out. Alrighty, that is as far as we're going to get today. Tomorrow we're going to start talking about some equality in FDR's administration and finish up with the New Deal. All right, everybody. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys.